Good afternoon, guys. Welcome to class. This is a reading class, and we're going to talk about well, the house sizes in the UK because it's very, very small. We live in very small houses, and there's an article about this. Yeah, so about living in small properties and things. We're also going to discuss, really, to begin with, what it's like in your country. So, are the houses big? What is the normal house like? So things like that. Yeah. So we'll share experiences. We're going to read the article and talk about the language that's used and things like this. So, first of all, I'm going to send you the article so everyone can see this. But first of all, we have. Oh yeah, I know you. So we saw yesterday. No, this is not you. This is Anna. Yeah. So is this your wife?
No, it's I. It's Roman.
All right. Okay, but is this your wife's name?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. Yeah. So I saw the name. I got confused because I saw you yesterday. You're from the Ukraine, right?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, then I saw your name and I thought, that doesn't quite right. Okay, so that's cool. Good to speak with you again. And Samir.
Yeah.
Good to speak with you again. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine, and you?
Perfect. Not too bad. Thanks. Okay, so quick question, guys. What are the houses like in your country? Are they big? Are they small? Where do most people live? Yeah. So Samir, what about you?
Yeah. Actually, I'm living in the United Kingdom, so you perfect than I know that the houses here are very small. But I'm from Brazil, and there we have totally different kind of houses.
Okay. Yeah. So whereabouts are you living at the moment in the UK?
In Derby.
Derby, cool. Okay, so that's cool. And what kind of house do you live in at the moment?
I'm living in a student hall. So
Yep.
I have my flat. I have my room and a common kitchen. So yeah, comparing to the other houses here, yeah, it's kind of big.
Okay, yeah, and is it expensive? Yeah, so is it expensive for you?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the price because I'm receiving a scholarship of
Yep.
my government. I'm from Brazil, so I don't know how much is it because the government
Deal with all of that, yeah. So
is paying directly to the university.
yep. So, but what kind of houses do most people live in Brazil? Yeah. So what is the normal house?
Normally there are 3 or 4 rooms and two bathrooms, one garage for two cars,
Yep.
and one living
What, a double
room.
garage? A normal house would have a double garage.
Yeah, we
This is a
have
rich
plenty of
person's
space in
house,
Brazil,
yeah.
so
That's a rich person's house, yeah, to have a double garage.
it isn't. If you're gonna live in big cities, probably you're gonna live in apartments, but in the countryside, it's usually to have houses for double
Double
spot for
garage,
cars.
yes, double garage. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, what
Yeah,
about
double
Iman?
garage.
Iman, are you there? Okay, I can't hear you just yet. I will come back to you, okay? But Igor,
Yes.
and what is the typical house? We talked about this a little bit yesterday, I think, yeah? So it came up. But what's the typical house like in Moldova?
In cities.
Yep.
Sorry.
And it depends, I guess, like who just spoke? Was it Samir? Samir,
Yeah.
like Samir was just saying, it depends on if you're in the countryside and the city. But what about in the city?
In city here we have the most apartments because I think houses are not very efficient to put houses in city. Too much space will be. They'll occupy or
They'll occupy too much space, as in they'll
Yes.
take up too much space. Yep.
houses. And we have apartments, and usually apartments 1, 2, 3 rooms. Apartments of 1, 2, 3 rooms, and in the middle is 2 rooms. And but as I said many times in your lessons, I think that here we have the tendency or
The tendency,
trend.
or the trend is.
Yes, the trend that people that new apartments are built studio in studio. How to say in studio?
Studio
style?
apartments. Yeah, so there's studio apartments are more popular
Studio
now,
apartments, one room, and they have about 40 meters square. Yes, it's correct to say.
right? 40 square meters, 40 meters squared stuff.
40 square meters they have in the middle. The average of apartment of new apartment they are built in my city.
Okay, so this is the trend. Guys, what about in your countries with this? Yeah, so Laurent, what would you say? So we
Hello.
spoke yesterday, I think. Good to speak with you again.
Yeah.
Where are you from again?
I'm from France.
I remember. Yes. Okay. What is it like in France then? So with houses.
In France, in big cities, the most popular maybe which called T3. It's an apartment with three room in which you can sleep or do something. Like for example, 2 bedroom and a living room. Okay. It's T3.
And when you say, guys, just double check. When you say apartments, like it has 3 rooms, do you mean 3 bedrooms or 3 actual rooms? Yes. Yeah, so
No, I say 3 rooms. It's
With
bedrooms and living room and all where you can put a sofa, for example.
okay. Cool.
Okay,
Yeah, so
so you don't inside you don't count kitchen.
okay, yes. So you don't count this, but every other room, because usually we say just a bedroom. So we say, oh, I live in a 2-bedroom flat, or I live in a 1-bedroom flat, something like this. Even if there's another room, yeah. So we'd usually quote it in bedrooms. Okay, so we've also got Mustafa.
Hi teacher, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you today?
I am good, thank you very much.
And I forgot, Mustafa. Where do you come from?
I am from Iraq,
Iraq. Cool.
but I now I stay in India.
In India, cool. What, for a holiday
Yes.
or for an extended time?
I stay in apartment.
Cool. Okay. And how would you compare the houses in India with the houses in Iraq?
I have in India I have an apartment, 2 dining room and 2 bedroom.
Yep.
And 1 kitchen.
Okay. Yeah. And how does the average house or the average apartment compare between the countries? So, what is it like normally in Iraq, and what is it like normally in India?
In Iraq I have big house, but now I have small this apartment.
Okay.
This different. And in Iraq not safety, but now here safety.
It's safe. Yeah. It's not safe,
Yes.
but now it's safe. Yeah. Where you are now.
Yes. Yes.
Peter.
Yes. Hello.
Okay. In Germany, average.
Average.
Yes.
I would say the tendency is to smaller flats now.
Okay. Like
Be quite big, quite large. And actually, well, at least where I live, it's much cheaper to rent a large flat. Let's say like 60, 70 or 80 square meters.
Do you mean cheaper per square meter or cheaper overall?
Almost cheaper overall because we have a university in Bremen. And because of that, the students are always looking for small accommodation. So they would probably look for apartments like up to 30 square meters or so. 30.
Okay, and you
40
get a
the
bigger apartment
most.
for less money.
They are really expensive here.
It makes sense, yeah. So it makes sense. This is interesting. Okay, but most people live in apartments. What about in the countryside and things?
Well, generally, I would say they might be larger because the older property is mainly larger.
Yeah.
When they build new houses, they tend to be smaller now, and everything has to be also suitable for elderly people now, because
Okay.
there's quite a demand in Germany for that. So they're actually converting older properties into properties for elderly people.
Like residential
Without
homes.
steps, so barrier-free, they call it.
A standard stair lift, yeah? So,
Yeah, something like that, maybe too, but mainly speaking, barrier-free.
okay, yep. So everyone can access it quite easily and things.
Yeah.
Okay, and do people like to live in the countryside in Germany?
No, not really. They are moving to the cities more because electricity, heating is so expensive. And
that's what I
if you
thought,
live
it's
in the countryside, you might have to drive a long way, and petrol is also very expensive.
Yep. So
the
I've noticed
tendency is
that
to
lots of
bigger
people like
cities.
to be in the cities, yeah. So there's lots of
Yeah, and that is more expensive anyway,
Yeah.
because it's cheaper to live in the countryside. Actually, people are now selling their houses in the countryside and try to move to the bigger cities because it's cheaper.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it's more convenient things as well. But Raffaella,
Hi, teacher.
good to speak with you, Raffaella. Where are you from?
Italy.
Cool. And okay, so my image of Italian houses are like on really old, narrow streets and made of stone. Yeah, and yeah, that or these big villas in Tuscany. Yeah. So what is the average house like in Italy?
In Italy, there is a big difference between the city and the periphery, like I think in all the country.
Yep.
In the big city like Milan or Rome, for an apartment about 50 or 60 square meters, people must pay about 700 for month.
700 euros a month.
Exactly. And
Including-
we are
does this
speaking
include
about
bills?
student apartment,
Does this include bills, or do you pay bills on top of this?
included bills.
Including, yeah?
Yeah, but the problem is that now in the last years these apartments are used by family and not student, and so by the crisis, economic crisis, and by the high price of the apartment, there is a big problem for living in the city.
Okay, so people are forced outside of the city, yeah, because of the
Exactly.
prices and things. That sounds
Exactly.
expensive, yeah. So, Samir, what would you say? In fact, someone just joined us on the other side. I'll just say hello to the other people first before.
Okay, no
Abdul,
problem.
good to speak with you again.
Thank you. Good to speak with you too.
Cool. And Iman, you there? Okay, Iman, we can't hear you. Just check your mic settings. We'll come back to you, okay? Just in the top right-hand corner, there's a button. I'll just show you very, very quickly, just in case you're not familiar. In fact, is this Iman from Syria?
Hi.
Oh, no, it's not. Okay, so, Iman, have we spoken before? I speak with another person called Iman. Hello, Iman?
Hello. Here.
Good to speak with you. I can't hear you so well. Okay, we'll come back. Okay, so Abdul and Iman will come back and ask you in a minute. But what do you say, Samir? Yeah. So in your country, you told me about Brazil already. They're big with the double carriages. Yeah. So, but can most people, if they live in the countryside, afford this kind of house? Yeah. So, is it the average house?
Yeah,
Because in
definitely.
the UK, to have this house, yeah, you'd have to be really, really rich. Yeah. So it's always surprising when I hear this. I'm like, you can have a swimming pool, you can have this. Like Abdul knows, yeah. So in America, it's like this, that normal people can have a swimming pool, yeah. So it's quite nice. Okay, so, sorry, I've forgotten your name, yeah. So the husband of Anna, I've forgotten your name. I'll write it down.
Yes, Roman.
Oh yeah, Roman. Okay,
Sorry.
no worries. Okay, so Roman. Okay, what is it like in Ukraine?
We have the same situation that you hear before about Moldova. So we have a lot of buildings with apartments, and most of our people live in such places.
Okay, so most people would live in the apartments and things. And can I just ask, do most people in your country buy or rent? Yeah, so in Germany, most people want to rent. Is that true, Peter?
They have to rent. because they can't afford to buy a house.
But
So,
but I've spoken to someone. They said they rent because one, it's easier. There's no hassle. And also,
no, that's wrong.
Okay.
That's wrong because it's too expensive.
to get the finance.
And it's changing in Britain too now because it's getting too expensive. And the British used to own their property. Now many people have to rent.
So they're saying this generation is going to be a nation of renters because one, the price is so high now in proportion to the salaries, which means unless you've got rich mummy and daddy, you can't really buy anything. And two, the banks are not lending so much. Yeah, so
and big companies are getting hold of that kind of business. I've just seen a documentation about that on Britain. That big companies build new property, new flats, and they are interested to sell as high as possible.
Yeah, so it's a big business, but the prices have gone up so much in proportion to the salaries. Yeah, and the banks will only lend, for example, like maybe 5 times your salary now or something like this. Yeah, so it's difficult to find something because the average salary may be 23,000. It's difficult to find something for 120,000. Yeah, so
even in the countryside now. I mean, if I remember Cornwall in the 80s, you were able to buy a decent house for something like 10,000–15,000 pounds.
I mean, my
now it's
grandparents
at
bought a house
least 3 or 4 times as much.
So yeah, it goes up quite a lot. But yeah, I don't know. So now we're going to rent, and then maybe in 10 years' time people will be able to buy. I'm not sure. Yeah. So boom and bust. Okay. So do most people in your country want to buy or rent, Abdul? Do people care about renting or care about buying?
No, most people, like to buy. I mean, not to rent, because if you buy a house, it's cheaper than, to rent.
Yeah. So it makes sense because the mortgage payments are often lower, yeah? So, and you get the asset.
Yeah.
Okay,
if you
most
go
people...
for rent, so that's going to cost you money, and if you go for, to buy a house, so I mean, it's I mean, like, compared to rent, it's a lot better,
Yeah, so it makes sense, yeah, in America to buy and stuff. How is it now? So after the crisis, because there was a lot of like mortgages in the UK and the US to people who couldn't pay the money back, yeah, and that was a part of the problem. Are the banks being a bit tighter now?
No, I mean, if your credit score is okay, and I mean, if you can afford, so I mean, they will, I mean, they're not gonna, I mean, let you go, I mean, so I mean, it's not a big problem,
Yeah, so ultimately it's their business to lend money. If they're not lending the money, they're not getting business, yeah? So, depends. But on your track record, and that's probably...
And especially right now, I mean, this is a very good time, just, to buy something in this kind of market, the properties are so down now.
And people's confidence is low as well, yeah? So the prices are cheaper.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dennis has joined us. Hello, Dennis. Okay, we'll come back. I can't hear you just yet, but we'll come back.
Hi.
Oh, now we can. Dennis, perfect, cool. And where are you from?
Do you hear me?
Yep,
yes.
Sure.
Okay, I'm from Russia.
Russia, cool. Which part?
Near Moscow.
Near Moscow, cool. Okay, so I've heard that prices in Moscow are crazily high, yeah? So
yes, it's so...
Like London, I've heard, yes? So
I think so.
So do most people want to buy in Russia or want to rent the house?
Want both, I think. Want to rent, of course, but it's very expensive here.
Okay, yeah, so it's expensive to buy, yeah. So I've heard about this. And also, what's the average house size like? Yeah, so
especially in Moscow.
Yeah, so I guess in the big cities and stuff, yeah. So St. Petersburg and stuff. But what is the average house size? Yeah, do you have big houses, big apartments, or what? Average.
It depends on your money, I think.
Okay, but is there a tendency, like in other European countries and things, in other countries maybe around the world, to live in smaller properties?
Maybe yes.
Okay, so people choose to live in maybe studio apartments and things. Okay, that's cool.
It's more simple, I think.
Okay, yeah, so same in most countries I think that we've talked about. Igor, what is it in Moldova? Do most people want to buy, rent, and what's the situation like?
I think the most people want to buy apartments because they are relatively cheap, relatively. Not, of course, cheap, but not so expensive. Oh, but
Oh, sorry.
where is the noise?
Don't know. Okay, maybe it's just
Anna.
mute some people around. Okay, so yeah, so most people want to buy, and it's relative. It makes sense to buy because the prices are okay. Yeah.
Not yes, they are not okay, but for it's more how to say more good. More
It's better, yeah. So
yes, it's better. Exists another word, but okay, it's better to buy a house instead to rent because now we have another tendency that you know old houses that have 5 flats.
Yep.
They build a 6th floor. Flat.
Oh yeah. So, like,
how is named this?
You could say they renovate it or they convert, yeah, loft conversions and things like this. So what happens in the UK is if you've got a house with a loft, you can convert this, yeah. Or we'd normally extend, meaning outwards, but I don't know. Abdul, do you know what this would be to build upwards? Yeah. So you could either say convert or renovate, but extend and get an extension, I would say. But an extension usually is when you extend the property, make it bigger, like that way.
Yeah.
But I don't know what about make it taller or whatever. But
mansard, it's named. Look, for example, house has 5 flats, but not your property house, but with apartments. How we name this block?
a block of flats or units, you mean?
Yes, unit, and has 5 flats. So they on this block they built 6th floor flat. So people can the house is that block is old, but they built a 6th floor, new 6th floor.
Yeah, and a new floor. Yeah. So I guess it's a bit like an extension, but more maybe
mansard. It's named mansard in our country. Mansard. Do you know?
Mansard. No, because normally people would either convert a loft because it's difficult to get.
Mansarde. Yeah. Well, that's a loft. Yeah.
A loft. Okay, a loft.
We have the same word in German.
Okay,
so
a
it's
loft
cheaper than because they not build house from zero. This house, but they all is built and they only put the walls and I don't know.
Yeah, so it's yeah, we'd say loft conversion. This is common for your house as well. Yeah, so if you rather than moving into a bigger house, you just make your house bigger. Yeah, so it's something like that. But it's difficult to get the permission to do this. Yeah, so I don't know what it's like there if it's easy. But Laurent, what about in France? Do people want to buy, rent, or what?
Most of the people are renting their house because, of course, like in the other countries, it's very expensive to buy a house.
Yeah.
House, excuse me. But finally, it's I think it's as expensive to rent a house is as expensive as buying it. But the only difference is when you have to buy a house, it's in one time. You have to give a lot of money. But when you rent a house, what? Excuse me.
The deposit.
Yeah. And when you have to rent a house, you deposit.
There's no deposit, yeah. So there is a deposit, but it's not like I don't know 20,000 euros or whatever, yeah. So
sorry.
Sorry, is someone there, Edward? Okay, you're going, Edward. Bye bye. Is he gone? Okay. Oh, he's back again. Yes. I complained about him. We're getting him blocked, yeah, based on his IP. So anyway, Laurent. Okay, so yeah, so most people would like to buy.
Would like, but can't because you have to go to the bank and ask for some money more to buy a house, and unfortunately because of your salary, you can't have more money from your bank, so you can't buy a house.
Yep. So it's the main problem with the deposit. Yeah. So it's getting the deposit together and the savings and things. Yeah. That's the main blockage. Okay. So Peter, you're saying you've already said this, but Raffaella, what would you say in Italy? Do most people rent or buy?
Yes, people I think that would buy a flat or a house, but the problem is that bank give no loan to people. So
Okay.
without a loan, the problem is to have all the money to buy a house. So people are forced to rent a flat.
Yep. So they're not lending the money to people. Yeah. So that's the problem. So
Yes,
people
the salary is too low to permit the people to buy a house in a moment.
Yeah, and because people, it's priority rather than saving the money for a house and things like this. But Samir, okay, so what about where you are? In Brazil, yeah. So we talk about Brazil, and I don't know if you know much about the UK or whatever, but how is it in Brazil? Do most people want to rent or do most people want to buy?
Yeah, people in general still want to buy their house instead of renting, but from 5 years ago, the prices are increasing a lot. So if you're gonna ask people now, they will prefer to rent than buy.
Okay, so they prefer to rent at the moment. And what do you say, Roman, in Ukraine?
We have interesting situation in Ukraine because we have very high price on rent apartment, and the same we have high price of apartment at all.
So it's just expensive, yeah. So just expensive.
Yes, and there is a situation when our average salary in people who live in our country is much lower than average month rent of apartment.
Whoa! So the average salary is lower than the average rent. Okay, so that of course is not possible. Yeah. So how does that work? Yes. So surely the prices would go down there.
It's very difficult situation, and most of our people who rent apartment try to share there with another person.
Okay, yeah. So they find other ways and stuff. Yeah. So, but people still pay the rent. How do people do this? Yeah. So if they have a family, for example, and they want to have an apartment just for themselves. Do they have to have savings, or how do they pay the rent if they're not getting enough salary to pay the rent?
Yes, most of our people who rent apartment earn money only for this apartment. They cannot even save any money. And we have situation where here that many young people or more elder prefer to live with parents because rent apartment is very expensive.
So they're together at the family home, things like that. Yes, that happens as well, and that's a tendency maybe now that people are going back to their parents. Yeah, so after university, or whatever, it maybe come back to their parents for a few years, things like this. Yeah, so I think in Italy, I've heard that there's a massive culture about this. Yeah, so people like to live with their parents. So up until maybe 35 or something, I've heard. Is it true, Raphael?
Sorry, I don't understand.
Oh, is it true? Because I've heard there's a culture in Italy to stay with the parents, as in to live together.
Yeah.
Because it's efficient, and also you can share skills. Yeah. So grandma can look after the child. You can do the cooking, something like that. Yeah. So it's like a community thing.
Yes, the Italian guys are famous in the world to stay with parents at 14 years old. So we are forced to stay here with parents or share activities like washing, or because we have no money to live alone, or not all naturally, but there is this problem in Italy.
Okay, yeah, so it's because you have to, kind of thing, and stuff like this. But it kind of makes sense, yeah, to share the task, yeah. So rather than doing it all by yourself, it kind of makes sense. I see the logic in it as well, yeah, from that perspective. Okay, guys, we're going to have a look at this article now. We're going to talk about this, yeah. So lots of people say when they go to the UK that their houses are very, very small to what they used to, but small and expensive. Yeah, that's the thing. So they used to maybe paying some money and getting a bigger apartment than what they get when they come to the UK, and thinking, oh, yeah. So it's about whether or not you can adapt to it, and whether or not you could live in this place. For me, it's perfectly normal. So every time I go somewhere else and the apartments are bigger, I'm like surprised. Yeah. So I'm used to this kind of small space. But anyway, okay, so let's have a look at this. And also, this name, is it an Italian name or a Spanish name? Does anyone know? So, what would you say, yes?
I think Spanish.
Not, okay, so he's a Spanish journalist. Cool. So I don't know if he's comparing, yeah? So I haven't read it all, but let's have a look. Okay, so who would like to make a start?
I can.
Yes, please.
The UK has some of the smallest new homes in Europe, so how can people cope living in a small space? Small is beautiful, but not if you have to live in it. A studio flat dweller might respond. The UK has a housing crisis. A shortage of homes has pushed price out of the reach of many hoping to get onto the ladder. But once they get there, they may be disappointed. The UK has some of the smallest properties in Europe.
Okay, let's stop. Okay, so there is the house crisis. One of the things they're talking about, because lots of...
Sorry, crisis or crisis?
Crisis. British English, crisis. Crisis. Yep, crisis. Okay, so the UK has a housing crisis, yeah? So there's basically, the population is growing, more people are living in the cities, there's not enough houses, yeah? It's probably, I don't know, it's probably a similar situation in your cities. And there's a shortage of homes, yeah? Meaning people are now, the government are trying to incentivize people to rent out their spare rooms, yeah? Because traditionally families would have a spare room, yeah, for guests. Now that they can't really have this because the price is high, and they're being incentivized to rent out this room, yeah? So otherwise they have to pay some kind of bedroom tax or whatever, yeah? So, okay, so the UK has some of the smallest new homes in Europe. So how can people cope living, you can say cope with living in a small space, or how can people cope living in a small space? To cope with something, what does this mean?
Manage something
with it.
Cool, yeah, so I can hear a bit of an echo. I'm just going to block people, but not block people, but mute people at random.
Deal, yeah.
There's still an echo somewhere. Okay, so to deal with something, yeah? To cope with something, to deal with it. So how can people deal with living in a small space? Echo, test. Can you hear? There's a bit of an echo, right? It's alright. Okay, so...
It's from Dennis.
Dennis? Oh, Dennis, there's a little echo from you. What we'll do is we'll just mute you in between, okay? But when you want to speak, just unmute yourself, okay? So, how do people cope living in the small space? Small is beautiful, but not if you have to live in it. A studio flat dweller. What does this mean? To dwell. To dwell on something, or to dwell, to be a dweller, yeah? So, something like this. Is it different meaning?
Dwells mean...
Inhabitant.
Yeah, inhabitant or occupier. So someone who lives in the studio flat.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a studio flat dweller, yeah? So someone who dwells, but to dwell on something is something else. Yeah?
I think we can also say that, like, I dwells in London or something, you know? Like, we can say
like I live in, yeah? It's a bit like this. So to dwell in something, or to dwell
word.
Sorry, Abdul?
So we can use the dwells word instead of living too, right?
Dwell. I dwell in London. It doesn't sound good, but it makes sense. But it doesn't sound normal, yeah. So we wouldn't normally say this, but I dwell in a 3-bedroom house. Yeah, it sounds a bit funny, but a mansion dweller, a castle dweller, something like that. A dweller, I would say, yeah. So someone who dwells in something, but to dwell on something is something else. Laurent, do you know this? To dwell on something. Oh, don't dwell on it.
No, no, I don't know. To dwell is to live, but to dwell on something.
Okay, yeah. So
to think about that something. To think.
Don't dwell on it. Meaning, don't think about it for too long. That's a different meaning. So,
for example, if something happens and you dwell on it, you think about it. What happens?
Yeah. Dwelling it, you spend too much time thinking, or something like this. Okay, so you to say I live in, or to reside in. Yeah, I reside in. But it's better to say I live in. A studio flat dweller might respond as someone who lives in a studio flat. Okay, UK has a housing crisis. You know what crisis is? I guess this is a very famous word since 2008.
Yeah, but this is kind of like weird crisis, it's the problem is demand and supply, not something else.
Yeah, the thing is, this is the point, yeah, so there's a huge demand for the property, so the prices are of course going up, yeah, so it's becoming even more expensive to get a house, and the salaries are not going up, yeah, so that's why they're saying it's a crisis, because there's not enough supply, people are not building enough houses.
I mean, we are talking about only, posh areas, like metropolitan cities, On the countryside, if I, want to be more specific, so, I mean, how much is the average?
In fact, the countryside can also be expensive. So it depends where you are. In Cornwall, it's cheaper in areas like this because they're just...
No, it's not. I just wanted to say that. They also have a crisis, but not because there's not enough space there for people to live in, because so many rich Londoners have a second home in Cornwall, and for example in St. Ives, because it's so popular with tourists.
I checked on this.
Almost half of the population of St. Ives are not locals anymore. So if you go there in winter, it's almost like deserted.
The thing is, the
because they only stay there in summer.
The countryside in the UK, especially in England, is popular for people either to buy second homes if they're rich, or for people to live because London's not far away from anywhere really, yeah, because it's kind of like in the middle, and the UK is small. So the countryside is not so cheap. In fact, sometimes the countryside can be more expensive, the land price, because lots of people want to live there, yeah, it's because they want the quality of life or whatever. But if you go somewhere like Scotland, yeah, the Highlands of Scotland,
or Outer Hebrides
in the north, the prices are lower. It depends. If you want to live in the forest, yeah, with I don't know if there's any bears or whatever there.
No, but the size, like on the countryside, how much is the average size of a house? Like let's say 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, and 4-bedroom. How much is the?
Well, if you get a cottage, a thatched cottage, I'll show you.
Yeah, the size of the covered area. How much is the size of the covered area? I'm not talking about the lot. I'm talking about the covered area.
I'll give you. I don't know. Yes, it depends because a lot of them are quite small. But I'll tell you where I lived. Something like this, if you were to buy this, would probably cost you £900,000. If you wanted to buy this house, it would be around 900 to £1 million.
And that's the countryside, right?
Yeah, the countryside. So it's about. I live 1 hour away from London or so.
Yeah.
So for a house like this, but of course not many people live in these. This is like kind of like a rich house.
But it's still commuter distance to London. I mean, it's almost like you were in kind of Greater London.
Essentially, yeah. So it's a commuting.
I think that makes it so expensive. If you go a bit further away, the price might drop considerably.
But for an apartment, St. Ives, I checked yesterday, Peter, because you told me about this. St. Ives, I think, for a really small apartment, for 1 bedroom, maybe £120,000.
Yeah, well, it's really terrible, and our houses are usually old, so you might have to invest on top of your purchase. Yeah. Because it's mainly old granite houses, and they used to be damp, and you might have to insulate and all that stuff. So it's
Yeah, so-
unbelievable, and the local people actually get moved out. They can't afford to live there anymore.
That's the thing. They're also saying that people getting priced out the market because maybe rich bankers or whatever in London want to have a really nice house in a really nice part of the country, forgetting that of course, if they've got the money, they can do that. But how is it, Laurent, in France? Because lots of British people want to buy like some kind of holiday home if they have money in the countryside in France, yes? But do people want to live in the countryside in France, the French people?
I live in the countryside because, of course, it's less expensive than in a big city. And yes, it depends which region. Of course, I heard, I don't know the name of who it's called, but he said, yeah, it depends. In the countryside, the prices are increasing.
Yeah.
Are increasing. That's okay. But it depends of which part, which region. For example, in my region, it's not so expensive. It's not as expensive as other region like Côte d'Azur.
Yeah. So that's
where rich people and rich personality are coming. Okay.
The thing is, it's difficult because for the normal people who live there. So, for example, me, I would never be able to buy a house really in my hometown. Yeah, and that's the problem unless you get a lot of money, and that's the thing which is quite annoying because you kind of the people who were brought up there, you're priced out. Yeah, you have to find some other part, maybe I don't know. Yeah, somewhere in the north or whatever. Yeah, so that's probably the main crisis.
No, see the crisis.
Edward, you're a numpty. You really are. Go away, and don't come back. Okay.
See, like, sir, the crisis, in the article, like we read, it's the problem of demand and supply, so, I mean, it doesn't make any sense, if there is a demand in the market, so, I mean, the builders and the suppliers should, go and build enough houses,
Yeah, so this is the thing. So the problem is also planning permission. So people want to build houses in the countryside, but there's lots of protected areas and things like this, and it's not so easy to get the permission. So they're talking now about reducing the regulation because that's a big problem that stops the market because builders want to build, but there's laws. Oh, you cannot convert this, or you cannot build an extra floor, or you cannot build on this land because this land means that, or whatever. Yeah, so there's a lot of kind of protected areas.
That's the reason, that I'm a big fan of capitalism because, these regulations and those stupid, silly things, they're not going to work out. You have to let the market, goes freely,
Yeah. And that's the thing, yeah. So
they put more regulation in the market, so I mean, it's only going to hurt the people,
But in the north, it's worth noting that in the north the prices are lower, yeah. So what they're trying to do is encourage more jobs, more companies to invest in the north to balance out, because in the south around London and the southeast it's very, very expensive, yeah, and it's completely out of proportion just because of London, yeah. It's not because it's really because it's close to London. So what they're doing, a lot of companies now are moving up north because it's cheaper, and also their workers can live in cheaper property and stuff like that, yeah. But I don't know, yeah. So
that's a good idea.
It makes sense.
Because usually you have to go where the jobs are. I mean, it's no good to have a big house on the cheap side if you live somewhere in the sticks where you don't find a job.
The BBC have moved recently to Manchester. That's one example. They moved from London to Manchester, and as a result, the Manchester economy is growing. And this is a lot cheaper than London, so they're trying to build Manchester up at like the London of the North, yeah, that kind of thing, just to balance it out because London is really, really expensive.
Like here, like just from in my neighborhood, just like 10 or 15 minutes away, from my house, and I am living like closer to San Francisco, just like maybe 35 or 40 minutes away from San Francisco, And there is a house for sale, the covered area is about 4,000 plus minus square feet, and the lot size is 8,000 plus minus square feet.
Wow.
And the price is like, I think, 265,000 or 266,000.
It's crazy. Yeah. So, and the thing is, but how many people live in America, Abdul? What's the population?
About 300 million.
300 million. How big is it? Yeah. So wait, let's get a map. Because the point is the population of the UK is growing. Now it's approaching 70 million people, and the island is really small. Yeah. So the land is really scarce. There's not enough land. So I don't know. Yeah. So that could be part of it. But look, if you look, yeah. Okay. Look at America. How big it is. It's got 5 times the population, but it's maybe like 30 times the size or something. I don't know. So it's because we have a small country and a big population relative to the size, I'd say. Yeah.
You were talking about companies that don't want to be in London anymore because the price is very high. Here in Derby, the city that I'm living, the Rolls-Royce opened a factory, and 11,000 people work here. So it is a small city, and the prices aren't so high. And companies want to come here because then the workers can live here in a good way of life, in a good style.
And actually, it's kind of, to be honest, it's the increase in prices, the high prices, is kind of a good thing for the overall country, yeah. Because when things like this happen, they're pushed to other areas to invest in these areas to build them up, yeah. So I think it's okay. On the one hand, it's for people like me who think, oh God, one day I'd really like to live in my hometown or something, and you think, okay, you can't. But then you get pushed around to other areas, and maybe it's good for the whole infrastructure. I'm not sure, yeah. But Peter, what about in Germany? People in Munich and stuff, yeah. So is there a centre where people like to go because of jobs and because that's where the money is in the industry? Maybe in the south, yeah?
Well, you earn more money in the south, generally speaking.
So
the further south you go in Germany, well, you can actually say that the more you earn.
Okay, so the south
the further west you go, west and south.
Okay, yeah. So southwest will be the perfect place then. Okay, so let's go on with this article then and find out what it's talking about. So, housing crisis, shortage of homes. You understand what that means, yes? There's not enough. Has pushed prices out of the reach of many hoping to get onto the ladder. We always talk about this, to get on the property ladder. So do you know what this means? To get on the property ladder.
Mm-hmm.
What is the meaning?
It means to buy your first house, to then get on the ladder to maybe one day buying a bigger house. Yes, I guess it's similar in America. Abdul, do you have this?
Sorry, could you explain it a little bit more?
So to get on the property ladder is when you buy your first small house, and now you're in the market, and eventually you can remortgage that, get more finance, get another property, or get a bigger property. Yeah, so to start playing the game almost.
Yeah, exactly, same thing.
Okay, yeah, so you say this to get on the property ladder and stuff. So in this case, it said out of the reach of many hoping to get onto the ladder. So because there's a shortage of homes, the prices are high, and most people cannot start playing the game. Yeah, start buying the house, and doing that kind of stuff. But once they get there, they may be disappointed. The UK has someone. I can hear my echo. It's quite annoying. I'll just mute some people. Okay, we'll see. Okay, so once they get there, they're going to be disappointed because they've spent all this money, and look, they're cramped. Yeah, so with these kind of bed things that we talked about yesterday, Peter.
But I think that is very special to Britain and maybe even to the States. I don't know about the States. But the first time I saw that, because we wouldn't do that in Germany, if you buy a home, that's your home usually for a lifetime. In Britain, they buy the first home, make it up and sell it again and move on to the next house. No?
Usually
that,
so, yeah. So people
was very new to me the first time I went to Britain.
Because it's like, for example, if you buy an apartment, I don't know, in your 20s, you leave university, buy a small apartment, then then the price increases. You use the profit effectively that you made for that to get the deposit on a bigger house. Then you can get a bigger house. Yeah, so it's like a ladder. So
that system really puts also the prices up. I mean, because you want to get some money out when you move on.
So it's a game.
And that makes it more expensive. It's almost like a game, yeah. And I heard that on the documentation too, that people nowadays in Britain, they make a living from that.
Yep.
They buy the first house, make DIY, and move on to the next property. And from the difference, they actually make their living.
It's a common business, and lots of people do this. What they do is for example, they want to buy a small apartment somewhere for £100,000. They have to have £20,000 in cash to make the investment. They buy that, they do it up, they sell it for 120 or £130,000. With that £30,000 and the £130,000, they then buy a bigger property, do that up, we'll sell it, then that kind of thing. So always renovating, and it is a game, and people can make a lot of money from this if you have the money to begin with, and if you don't buy some stupid property. Yeah. So if you buy the property maybe in the good area and things like that. Yeah. So it can be a good business. But again, you need the money to get started with. Yeah. So it's not easy for most people, but a lot of people do this as a sideline, like a weekend thing.
But it pushes the prices too.
Yep. Because of course people are keeping on to the property until they think the price is high, and at the moment the prices are getting high, but they're not selling it because they think, oh, next year it'll be higher, so I'll wait and sell it maybe. Yeah. So Abdul, this kind of property investment stuff, do people do it in America?
A lot.
Okay, so it's quite common, yeah.
Yeah.
And we have the same situation in Ukraine because we have no stabilized economy, and we don't have development trade. I mean bills trade. So a lot of our people prefer to invest to buying apartment, and we have a situation when many new buildings were built, but they stay alone without people because they are investigation.
I heard about this. Yes. So like people keep apartments empty. They don't rent them out or anything, but they're empty. Yeah, and that's probably, I don't know why it's expensive in Ukraine. Yeah, so to rent because of lots of empty things and stuff. Okay, so Samir, yeah, so we talked a lot there. Have you got anything to say? So how is it in Brazil with the whole thing, yeah? So the attitude to property, and does this happen where people try to make money from it like this?
Actually, in Brazil, I think it's much more easier than you are discussing there, talking about. I think in Brazil, you can rent an apartment in a small price. Yeah, generally, it's not a big deal to have a house. I mean, like Rafael told us that in Italy, almost all the people live with their parents until they are 40 years old. In Brazil, when you turn 18 and you go to the university, you start to live without your parents. And after, when you graduate, you try to find a job and try to rent a house at the first moment and start to how can I say, to save money and then buy a house. So
okay, yeah, so
I think for us it's easier than for people in Europe and the United States.
Yeah, because maybe the I don't know, yeah, so I don't know how much it costs to buy. It's mainly it's the deposit, because as soon as you've got that deposit, you're off, yeah. So as soon as you can find, I don't know, £20,000 in cash, you can start, yeah, really. Yeah. And a couple of years ago, they used to. This was part of what caused the crisis in the UK, is that they offered maybe 120% mortgages, which meant you could go in as a normal worker, you could say, right, I've seen this apartment, I want to buy this, can I have the finance? They go, yeah, we'll give you 100% of the value of the apartment, plus maybe 20% of the value of the apartment, so you can furnish it. So they'll give 120% loans. So, for example, if the apartment costs £100,000, the bank would loan you £120,000. And of course, which is more than the property value. When people couldn't pay back, then of course the bank lost money. Yeah, so they couldn't re-get the money by selling the property, because the money they got was not so much. Yeah, and a lot of people took advantage of this, and now they're super cautious. But Laurent, what do you say in France? Does this kind of industry exist? As in, people maybe in Paris want to buy houses in the countryside, renovate them, and make money from them?
I know I have some friend who get some money with this. They bought some small apartment, and it's another deal. They bought some apartment and rent them.
Yeah.
Rent them to
rent them out. And gîtes and things like that, yeah? So if you have a house in the country or something, you can rent, like, as gîtes. I've heard about these.
Yeah. But, yeah, actually, it's so difficult to have money. So to buy an apartment, like you said, the more difficult is to begin.
Yeah. It's like £20,000. I don't know. Yeah, it's not easy money. Yeah, so for most people.
Yeah.
Okay, so Igor, what about you? Yeah, so Moldova, do you have this kind of game? Yeah, so people doing it.
What, to buy in the countryside apartment?
Dabbling in a bit of property investment.
They buy an apartment and after that sell that apartment.
They want to sell it for a higher price, then go to another property, then maybe rent it out to someone.
It depends on each person. I think if they have money, it's the most profitable business because you buy an apartment when it's constructed at the point of when they start to build that. How to say? Block for many people where they live many people, house for many people, or apartments. Building. Building. They start to build building, for example, in city, and people start to buy this building at the start from the beginning.
So the company gets the money to build. Okay, that makes sense.
And the company has the money to build, and apartments are very cheap because they are not built, and they're very cheap. And people buy. They wait 2 years or 1 year. The duration, duration or time of building.
Yeah. So the duration, you can say they have to wait a period of time.
Yes, they have to wait about 1-2 years average, and they wait this time. And after that, they give constructor company give to that people these apartments. And they start to give in rent. How to correct?
So to pay rent.
No. They have as a property these apartments, and they put advertisements, for example, on the internet that they
rent
give
them out. Yes, so they rent them out.
Yeah, they. But another word we yesterday.
Let them.
Yes. So. Or they can sell them for a higher price, about 30-40%.
So you do have this kind of thing, yes? It's very similar. Also, just reminded me, this is starting to get popular now as well, but we can buy a percentage of a house, yeah? So now, for example, if you go on the UK websites, a lot of them say, 25% home ownership, meaning you own 25%. So a lot of them, if you search, it looks cheap, but you're only getting 25% of the house or whatever. And you pay 75% of the rent, yeah. So, or you could buy 50% of the house, things like this. For me, I find this a little pointless.
Like a co-op or what?
Sorry.
Like a co-op.
Well, basically,
because we have something in Germany like that. You buy a share of the company, and you are partly owner of your rented accommodation.
Yeah.
And in exchange, you get a lower rent.
You buy it off the investor, so the investor still has the property, but he gives you 25% of this, which means the rent is lower, but you own a proportion which you can then trade on. You can then sell your share. Yeah, so I find this quite odd, but it's a way to get some asset.
Yeah, no, because this kind of thinking is very interesting because I've never heard it about before, because you can buy like a percentage of the house and then they're gonna discount
and rent it out. You still get the same proportion, yeah. So you can still rent it out and you get 25% of rent. Okay. So it's a way of getting there for a low amount of money, I guess. Yeah, and then eventually buy more of the asset or something. I don't know. Yeah, but people start to do this now. Okay, guys. You can add me on Facebook if you like. Okay, so Martin Stoner. and you can add me. But take care, guys. I've got to go now, but good to speak with you, okay? So hopefully we'll catch up in a future session, okay?
Okay.
Take care.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank